Hi and welcome back to Module 7. In this module we're going to talk about classes. So classes in Python is it's a way to create a blueprint or a design to create objects with certain properties and methods. And in Python, when we define a class, we use the keyword class, and multiple objects of the same class can be created, each with its own data and behavior, but it has the same structure. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the init method. So when you create a class in Python, you need to define a special method called init, and that's like a constructor method that gets initiated when you create an object of that class. So now we're going to go over how to use the init function. So here we've created a class called person, and you created first by using the keyword class, and then you type person, and then the init method is defined. So you type def double underscore init, and then double underscore again, and then self to tell the class that if you want to give a certain parameter a name or something, you can tell it to use self, and then it will add that name to that parameter. So here we have name and age, and under that it says self. So itself will change the name of name, and after that self will change the name of age. So here we're going to try to use that class and create a class or an object of the class person called Saeed with the age 25. So let's run the code. Here we have an error, and that's because I didn't run the first code where we created our person class. So let's run that code, and then we run our second code again, and now it works, and it prints out Saeed and the age of Saeed. And then we're going to go over the string function or the str function, and that's another special method that you can define in a Python class, and it's used to define how an object should be represented in a string. So it provides a human-readable string representation of an object, and it's really good for debugging or logging purposes, or for displaying object information to the user. So here's an example of the string method for our person class. So as you can see, first it's the definition of init with the previously made code, and then it's the definition of the string with self, and then if you print that object, it's going to return the string that's printed here. So let's run this code. And then we want to create and print a person object. So let's run this. And here it prints out the printed, the string version that we wanted the class to print out if an object was called.
So as you saw previously, classes can have methods, which looks like functions. Basically, they are functions. Methods, they are functions that belong to the class and accomplish a particular task. The whole structure class is working as like the box with the different functions which are doing some particular job. In this example, we are trying to create kind of like a robot class, which will contain different functions or methods which will perform different actions like move to, pick up, release, and our class instance. Basically, in this example, we are, as the first step, we are creating our self instances of the class, given the assigning the variables and given the values like here in the current load. And then we are creating each function, each method, which perform particular task like here. Basically, we have three methods here: move to, pick up, and release. Each method, each function has its own parameters list, as we previously covered it in previous module 6 with a function. And let's try to what the method pick up doing. Basically, we are giving the load, the kilograms, how many kilograms the robot can pick up, and then we run in the code with different inputs. So the running through the code, like pick up, move to, and then release. It will make different sequences of actions. And then once the method release will call, it will just, for example, reassign the current load to 0, because as you can see here in our method here, we are adding our previous load that we applied. So if we run our class, and then let's try to check our method that we created. The first method is going to be pick up. So firstly, we are going to give the input, our robot arm, like the maximum length and the maximum weight. And then we are going to put some weight in our method pick up, which is going to actually change the whole class. So basically, what the code is doing, we are going to call our pick up method with, for example, 2 kilograms, and then recall again with the updated value of 3 kilograms. So basically, it's adding in a conditional code, and then as long as the maximum weight is reached, we have our else code which I actually activating and saying that the object is too heavy for robot arm, as long as the code doing kind of looping with our inputs. Then we can do the calling method the release, which actually going to update the current load to 0, like here, and then we don't gonna have the warning statement like here. As you can see, it was 5 kilograms, and once we use the method release, our variable current load, it's updated with a 0 value. Then let's check the example with the rectangle class, which is gonna basically calculate the area, and of course have the, as we previously showed you, the self instance. Here we are basically given the attributes of length and width, and then in the method area we are just basically multiplying our instances attributes, the length and width. And by the same way we did for robot arm and the pick up method, we're gonna call the method area from the class rectangle with the inputs of the 5 meters of length and 3 meters of width, for example. Our recommendation for you is to try to make the same similar class, but for the circle, which gonna define a radius by using, of course, the appropriate method, and then try to make it with a specific inputs as a radius of 5, for example, and print the area.
Okay, so continuing with functions and classes and how are they different. So if you notice, based on what we saw in classes method, you can see that to some extent they work like functions. So in this section, we're going to try to explain their differences and how we use function and classes in different contexts. So I would say functions and classes, they try to accomplish the same task, but they are used in different ways. So in this example, we show how a class and a function are used to achieve the same results. So in this first rectangle class, what we do is we specify a class called rectangle, similar to the previous example where we specify the length and width. And then after that, we have a class method which is area, and then it will return to you the length multiplied with the width, which will be the area of the rectangle. Similarly, we did a function that calculates the area of a rectangle. So here we define a function that says calculate rectangle area, and then it will accept 2 variables, which is the length and width. And then now we calculate the rectangle, which will be the new variable, which will be the rectangle equals to the length and width. And then we will return the rectangle area. So what we're trying to do then is we're trying to print the results of both of these classes and functions. And let's see, what do we get? And for both of these classes and functions, we get the same value, which is 15. So at the end of the day, what it boils down to is what is your preference. So you can either use classes or functions for computing the area for a rectangle. I would say a function is perhaps simpler. But if you have a lot of different rectangles, and from all these different rectangles you want to get the area, maybe it's better to use classes because it will pass through the code once. So it's just a matter of design and personal preference, and what do you think is easier for you to achieve, because at the end of the day you can have different codes that try to achieve the same thing, but as long as you get the necessary outputs and the values that you want for your code, I think it's fine. Okay, so now we're going to have an exercise for this module where we want you to try and modify the class robot arm that we've shown previously. And then we want you to create a class that will move the arm position to X, Y, and Z, and also add a method to print the current position of the arm. So the portion of the code which you will have to modify is here. You can see here that you have to insert the code to move the arm to a specific X, Y, and Z position, and then try to include a print statement so we can also know the current position. You can pause the video here, and then after a few moments we will discuss the solution together. All right, hi guys, welcome back. Now we're going to go through the proposed solution for what we mentioned earlier. So here you can see how we adjusted the code to account for first printing the current position of the arm. So here we just have the print command, and then we have moving arm to position X, Y, and Z. And then after that we have the current position, which will accept the input from the user, so the X, Y, and Z coordinates or locations. And then here, now we specify the variable myRobotArm, and then we have to specify the maximum length and the maximum load. And then after that, we tell it to move to, and then we have the X, Y, and Z locations. And then when you run this, you will see, okay, now it's printing moving arm to position 1, 2, and 3. So this is an example of how you can modify classes, and this is how we do this exercise to print the current position. I hope this module was very useful for you guys, and thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next exercise.